So here's one we've all been waiting for. The prequel to this year's smash hit, X. And we have Pearl.
Pearl.
A prequel set in 1918. And this follows the character of Pearl, obviously, from the film X in a much younger state than the last time we saw her. And she looks strikingly like the girl in X young. Man, I wonder why. So yeah, I mean, for someone who doesn't know, Mia Goth obviously played Pearl as the older lady in X, and of course the main character Maxxxine in X as well. So she plays dual roles there, and she reprises her role in this one as Pearl. So there are going to be some people who are confused by that, and there are still going to be some people who don't know that she was. I just saw on a Facebook post like a day or two ago, someone was like, "You're telling me that was the same person in the makeup?" And I was like, "Oh wow." So there are some people.
Sure.
And that's fine. I mean, I think that's more of a testament to her performance than, like, you know, some strike towards your intelligence or something. Yeah. Like, it's good makeup. It's, you know, I didn't realize that Tilda Swinton was that guy in Suspiria until after the movie.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
You know. Anyway, so this, as I said, is set in 1918. And this has some similarities to X in the sense of Maxxxine and Pearl mirror each other in certain ways. They both want to be stars. And they'll do pretty much anything to achieve it. So they are connected in that way. And this, okay, I'll say this. This is definitely a much more intimate character study. X is a throwback slasher that definitely has more depth to it than the average slasher. But this film very much focuses on Pearl and Pearl alone. The other film definitely focuses on both of them. And that's going to be great because it has been confirmed, and you can even see the teaser either online or you can wait for it at the end of the credits here at this movie for Maxxxine with 3 X's.
Triple X.
I had called right after we watched X and we found out Pearl was going to be a thing. I was like, oh, please make a third film chronologically that's called Maxxxine, because the titles put together, Pearl X Maxxxine, will be so great. I'm not sure how I feel about the triple X's, but I get it. It's porn, right?
Yes. Adult content.
So yeah, she lives on the same farm that we see in X. She lives there with her German mother and her father, who is has been completely ravaged by influenza to the point where he's just almost catatonic. I mean, he can't do anything for himself. He can just kind of sit there and slightly emote, and that's it. So, you know, she hates her life there, and she has dreams of a bigger life, and she is willing to do anything to get it. And
she sure is.
The levels, okay, I'll let Kaylee talk on this. I mean, even though I'm excited about it, I feel like she's really, really excited to talk about what I was going to say. So,
well,
Pearl, what'd you think?
Pearl, I mean, I adored this film. Like, I was super into it from start to finish. I loved X, but I think, like, I need to rewatch X, but I think I like Pearl more.
Okay.
And
that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it's just so emotional, and it's one of those, like, you know, slashers are only as interesting as the side characters or like the victims and the lore around them are. Most slashers, like we've talked about how Michael and Jason, like, they don't speak, they don't have any kind of like real, you know, personality. But somebody like Norman Bates, where like you have this really, you know, character that's full of depth and is very interesting. That's what Pearl is. Like, seeing how her life leads up to, you know, not quite to the point of where X is, but how it gets on that trajectory was just, it was incredible. I think that Mia Goth's performance in this is potentially my favorite of the year.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking. She has a monologue that, you know, I told you in the car reminded me and rivaled Rebecca Hall's monologue. And it's just, she plays such an unhinged character. Like, watching the range of emotions from, like, innocence and confusion to, like, rage and hatred, and all of it's so confusing and, like, jumbled up, was just, it was incredible. It's kind of like watching somebody, for me, especially because we just watched with Maxxxine. It reminds me of that kind of a performance of somebody who's so psychotic.
In Cape Fear.
In Cape Fear, sorry, yeah. Who's so psychotic and capable of doing, like, anything and everything to not only get what they want, but also to make themselves ultimately, like, in the right. Like, to be vindicated in what they do. I was trying to kind of, like, diagnose her while I was watching the movie, too. So I kept kind of comparing her traits to people who are, like, bipolar, like, or borderline, have borderline personality, because we don't really, I feel like we never see enough of psychotic women in movies. We always see, like, psychotic men and crazy men, and there's, like, you know, obviously overlap with clinical symptoms between men and women, but there's also differences. And I really, really love seeing, like, a batshit crazy woman on the screen, and to see kind of how society and, like, her life especially could lead her to this place. Although I think that in the case of Pearl, it's kind of hinted at that she has, you know, maybe a chemical imbalance or, like, a genetic problem, because she sort of is this way her whole life. But obviously her situation does nothing to help her. So, I don't know, I know I kind of rambled there, but I'm, like, very into the film and super impressed with all of it. I also really loved the fact that it's set during a pandemic and it was filmed in a pandemic. Yeah. So seeing kind of her mother's reaction to the pandemic and everybody else's kind of fear, you know, of catching it, definitely mirrored what the world went through with coronavirus and is still going through to an extent. So
it was a clever way, of course, to mask up on set when they were probably needing to. I'm sure during the filming of X, which was filmed at the same time, they were dealing with a lot of, like, set issues with, like, you know, if you're gonna have this many people, you're gonna have to wear masks, and they're having to shoot them separately in order to be able to achieve that, or, you know, keep them a certain distance apart, or take tests or whatever. And for them to actually use this influenza virus that ravaged the you know, America at that time, very, very reminiscent of COVID, of course, using that as the backdrop, it is super clever, and you know, speaks to the times, of course. So really, really smart in doing that. I think that this is definitely going to be a series, and we'll see how Maxxxine turns out. But this will be a cool you know, duology here, and where people land on it. I do think that the majority of people who liked X will like this. I don't think you'll be disappointed. There's, of course, going to be some people who are. That's always the case. But for the most part, I think this is mostly exactly what you think it's going to be. If you think that this is really focused solely on Pearl and what brings her to be her. So I do think it's going to be kind of a little bit of a split, where, you know, some people who like more of that intimate character study this is going to be their preferable film, and people who are more into, like, just straight up slashers are going to prefer X, but I think they'll like both. So I like that this is not some carbon copy of X, even though there are similarities in the characters. They lead completely different lives. And Maxxxine, while, you know, makes some questionable decisions, and I'm sure is going to make even more questionable decisions in Maxxxine, Pearl is just, I think what's so great about Mia Goth in this franchise, and I'm sure will be the same in Maxxxine, is the range of depth that she brings to her characters in so many different ways. Like, Maxxxine and Pearl are similar, but they're also wildly different. And like, she really sells everything she's going for in this movie. There's this innocent farm girl who just has, like, you know, these rose-colored glasses on, and has these stars in her eyes, and wants to be this big sensation across the United States. And man, like, she is so adorable and like charming and sweet, and you're really rooting for her, even though you know the outcome. Even though you know, like, she's gonna become this psychotic, kinky lady later in her life. You just can't help but be like, oh man, like, I hope this works out for her. You know it's not going to, but she seems so sweet and so innocent. And I do feel like this is a combination. We've talked about this before, where, you know, there's always that argument of nurture versus nature. And I've always said that it's, you know, it can be, there's no blanket statement or prognosis, one size fits all kind of thing. There's people who are all nature. There's people that are all nurture, and there's people that are some of both, and to varying degrees of on both sides. So I think with her, this is like 50-50. I feel like this is nurture and nature, right? I feel like she has a predisposition, right? Because we see in the opening, she's already a little off, right? She's doing things that aren't great, but nothing like so terrible that it would be like, you know, prison worthy or anything. So it's just like she's showing those first warning signs, and then it just takes that right storm, the perfect storm of elements to just push these people over the edge. And yeah, like she said, there are two moments, and why I would say that I prefer Mia Goth's performance over Rebecca Hall's. Rebecca Hall in Resurrection is a revelation. She's amazing. She's phenomenal as she always is. But what takes it over the top for me is like where she starts, where she goes, and where she ends. There's a monologue, yes, and the monologue is impressive to say the least. It is very long and very emotional, and the amount of different emotions she's able to capture in there, from literally name it, she pretty much goes through it and you watch it all over her face, and it's a stationary shot of just her for maybe 7 minutes. I mean, it's a crazy long bit of dialogue, and kudos to Ti West and Mia Goth for writing this thing together. So that's great that she got input. I don't think she had writing credits on X. I could be wrong, but I don't think she did. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not. I don't think she had anything to do with that script. But obviously, this was much more personal to her, and I really hope she works on the Maxxxine script as well. But in addition to this monologue, she also has a very, because obviously she lives. Right? Obviously, she gets away with this to some degree, to where she still's on this farm. She's still with Harold. She's still, you know, Harold or Howard? It's Harold. Oh, right?
I thought it was Howard.
Is it Howard?
But
we messed that up in the car, and then I flipped it around in my head. Whatever the hell it is.
It's something with an H. I thought it was Howard.
It's right here. It's
Howard.
Okay.
It's Howard.
I'm glad I checked.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know how this ends up. So there's no spoilers of like how this ends with her. You know, she kills people. She gets away with it.
Yeah.
She's living in that form. Like, we all know that happens. So that's of no surprise there.
Yeah.
But this has to be one of my favorite closing credits I've seen in a film, because it's really kind of like daring, and I can definitely see it like when we were watching Barbarian. I can definitely see it being like uncomfortably, unintentionally funny, where people are like laughing at it, like, okay, this is over the top, but it's like, and I'm not sure what it is exactly, if it's artistic choice or if it's supposed to be literal. I don't really care. And also, so that scene's amazing, but another thing is, I'd have to really sit down and think about it, but I will say, off the top of my head, this has the most real decapitation I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah, it was definitely hyper realistic.
Like, she's chopping up a body in this, and it is so real.
Yes.
It's crazy, and they never shy away from it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how the hell are they doing this?
I know. I'm glad you brought it up, because I was looking at the prosthetics, like, that's an arm. Like, that's a real human arm.
It's the head that blew me away.
But the head especially, it's like, I don't know how they did it. It looks so real.
So it's Weta Workshop, who did Lord of the Rings and everything. So it doesn't shock me, because they're amazing. And they do incredible practical effects. But this is legit. Like, this straight up looked like the actor being decapitated.
Yes.
And it's wild.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely,
man, big props there as well. I do think that this film might be a little too slow for some people who are wanting this to be a little bit faster paced. But I remember X being very fast paced. I remember X being a slow burn with great moments. And this is a slow burn with an amazing performance, better than anything in X.
Yes.
X has great performances. This has like Oscar-winning performance.
100%.
Right? So this is incredible. And I'd say, I'd prefer to X as well.
Yeah.
Even though I am a big slasher fan, as everybody knows. But my favorites on subgenre of horror is psychological, and especially like character-driven, antagonist-centric horror, which is not something we get often.
Right.
Where we follow the antagonist throughout the film, and she's so sympathetic.
Yes.
But then she like takes herself into territories where you start to lose sympathy for her, but still retain some of it. She's still so believable as somebody who is just lost and desperate. And I also like that they don't take this film in any too many obvious directions with like her upbringing, like with her mom and her father. There's definitely some things there, but I was happy that they didn't go down the like typical obvious route of like her being overly abused physically and raped, or no, they don't go down that road. And I was really happy about that. Right? She just kind of has a sheltered, overbearing, controlled life, and she just wants out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty typical farm life for a girl back in the day.
Yeah.
And she just is not having it.
Not at all.
And man, this feels so period accurate. The fact that they shot this back to back with X, and X is set in the 70s, and that feels so period accurate. And they were literally shooting them together at the same time, so they were like doing the aughts, and then they were doing the aughts. Isn't the aughts are the zeros. How do you say the tens?
I don't know. The teens?
Oh, yeah, the teens.
The teens?
I think that might be
and
right.
And then the 70s?
I think the aughts is when it's like 06, 05,
yes.
06, yeah. And then the tens, the teens. But what would be the 10 through 12? That's not the teens.
I don't know.
Let us know if you know. I don't know what to call that. The 1910s.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's...
It doesn't get its own category. There's probably a term for it. Let's not spend any more time on it. But yeah, I'm definitely here to gush over the film. Easily top 10 for me of the year.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure where it would fall currently, but it's super high.
It's super high for me too.
Yeah.
I was, beyond blown away. Yeah. And the other thing that we didn't address, or at least for me that I loved, was the soundtrack. The music is phenomenal. It's like orchestral, very like early film where they had like a live orchestra playing, and it just like swells and flows with the story so beautifully and so naturally.
The film's very romantic.
It's very romanticized, which is
she's
perfect.
having like a romance with herself.
Yes, she is pure fantasy and delusion, and it's just it's amazing to see her go through this journey. And just what you were saying about like, you know, having an antagonist centric film that's like a character study, and also relating it to like the nature versus nurture. I think that that's so fascinating, because it's kind of like, you know, for any of us, we could have turned out like that, you know, in the perfect storm. If you have some kind of trauma or, you know, some minor psychological problems and things kind of just, you know, accumulate in a certain way, like anybody could have those kinds of psychotic breaks, you know, even if, but obviously she doesn't have feelings. So that's one big difference for most people. But it's just such a great film. I can't say enough about it.
She carries the whole film.
Yes.
Right? Like this whole film is centered on her. Every other character in it is good. They're fine at what they're doing. Their performances are good. But you're there for Pearl.
Yes.
And Pearl delivers. And that's what matters. And there's not a single scene in this film that doesn't feature her. And there's not a single scene in this film that she doesn't bring everything and nail everything that they're going for successfully and entertainingly and emotionally. So a fantastic film. Yeah. A fantastic film. As good of a follow-up to X as I could imagine and hope for. And if Maxxxine can land as well as X and Pearl, you'll have one of the greatest horror trilogies of all time. I mean, it would be really hard to find one that rivals it outside of a very few key trilogies.
Yeah, I mean, I
agree. The trilogies in horror are rare already. And for them to all be excellent, we'll hope. I'd be super bummed if Maxxxine doesn't pan out.
Yeah,
right?
I will too.
I genuinely can't imagine that happening.
Well, yeah, I can't either. Just, you know, the quality of both Pearl and X, you'd think that it would continue into Maxxxine for sure. And I'm very excited to see the 80s in this, like, hyper-period accurate way.
The one thing I was slightly surprised by, and we'll end it here unless you have anything else to say, is I was pretty surprised by how tamed down the sexuality in this movie was because of who Pearl is in X and how X is and what Maxxxine will be, and maybe that's why they did not go so heavily into sex. I was expecting, you know, because Mia Goth she's naked in I think every movie I've ever seen her in, and she's always sexualized, and in X she's a porn star, and her character is very, very sex centric. And what we see out of even Pearl herself, the old woman in X, is she's a horn dog, big time. She's all about sex and kink and, you know, whatever. And this guy like can't satisfy her needs, and she's like, I need it and whatever. There is some sex for sure. There's some, you know, moments of it, very little, but she's never nude in the film. She never shows anything in the film, which was shocking to me. And there's no sex scene in the film. There's no like that. It's very, very little sexuality in this, and I was shocked by that because I thought we were going to really explore her sexuality and what made her the girl that she was. But I can see the foundation for it laid here, right? Because of her relationship with the projectionist. Yeah. That kind of puts her in there. And I would even watch, 100% I would watch a Pearl 2.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, in a freaking second.
Yes.
So
yeah,
this doesn't even have to stop at a trilogy. I would totally watch a Pearl movie with her and Howard.
And Howard, yeah.
And how she becomes so sexual and maybe even like makes little porns and
Sure.
whatever.
I kind of think
anyway.
that the way it's kind of going is, so Pearl is a little less sexualized, X is more sexualized, and then I think Maxxxine is going to be where it's like very, very hypersexual. And obviously I could be wrong, but that sort of seems like the incline to me in terms of like graphic sexuality and whatnot.
I mean, I'd love Maxxxine to somehow get released NC-17 and really go for it.
Oh my gosh, that would be intense.
To ramp it up, so we'll see.
Yeah.
But other than that, fantastic film.
Amazing.
Hopefully it won't let you guys down. If it does, I'm honestly not sure what you expected this film to be. I feel like it's almost everything I expected it to be outside of the sexuality. But her performance alone should be worth the price of admission.
Yeah. 100%.
So, yeah. We'll see you in hopefully 6 months for Maxxxine.
Yeah.
We'll see you in like an hour for another review. But as far as this series goes, hopefully the next one comes out in March and it'll just be like 1 year. All 3 are released in one single year.
That's what I was hoping, because that would be like such a gift, such a wonderful gift.
Yeah. But we know for sure, I mean, not for sure, but pretty much 99.9% sure we are not getting it in 2022. But we could definitely see it in early 2023.
Yeah.
So, very exciting.
Yes.
We'll talk about it then. And what do you guys think? I'm sure you saw it, and if you haven't, go see it.
Go see it right now, and then tell us what you think. And then also, when you are here or when you come back, you should subscribe and like and share. And you can follow us on TikTok, and you can find our Patreon in the description if you want to support us there. And yeah.
She's my shill.
On the shill.
I put all those responsibilities on her.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.